All right, so welcome back to the Slow Pitch Podcast. And this time we are going to be talking about cold calls and when is the best time to make a cold call. Do you know when the best time to make a cold call is, Lane?
It's never a best time to make a cold call.
And why is that?
Who wants to have their day disturbed by the phone ringing? It's not a number anyone recognizes. You look at that phone, and you go, I don't want to answer that.
You know, I mostly agree. I mostly agree with that. And I think most people don't want the cold calls unless they're kind of an entertaining and fun call that people can, when they hang up, they laugh. They're like, yeah, that was pretty good actually. And that can happen. And while I would say, well, that's a whole other episode we can get into how to make a really good cold call. The real question I want to answer today is, when is a good time to make a cold call? And so the short answer to me is now. If you're thinking,
Now.
yeah, right now, like if you're thinking, should I be making a phone call right now? And unless it's in the middle of the night when you're listening to this, I would say any day, any time is a good time to listen. That's my first answer.
Well, I would say wait till you're done listening to this and then make the cold call.
Well, okay. Yes, I guess that's true. You probably want to hear the rest of what we have to talk about probably, but for the most part, you shouldn't be waiting. In other words, what I'm trying to say is everybody stalls, everybody waits. Everybody's like, well, I don't know. That phone looks really heavy. I don't think I can lift that thing up. Right. And it's one of those things I'm not sure I want to do. And I get that. So the first thing I would say is just pick up the phone and start dialing when it's time. And don't even think about it. Don't think about what you're going to say other than, hello, my name is, and that's it, right? That's all you have to get out. And then once you started that, you're kind of stuck. You got to get going. You got to start saying something, right? So
if they don't just hang up on you.
If they don't, but you know what, if they do, you do another one. You got to talk to somebody, right? So, but is there a good time or is there a best time to do that? And I think there is. So here's what my first thing that my brain goes to. I have noticed that incoming calls come at a specific day and time. And I can look that up on analytics on Google because I can see when people look at my website, I can see them look. That's when I have the most traffic. And ironically, that's when I get the most calls or incoming emails. So that's when people are out there looking. So if they're out there looking, the odds are that I would have possibly a better time to catch them at a slow time of their day. That's number one. So
what you're saying is there's times of the day that you'd like me to turn your website off?
No, there's not. But there is times that when prospects call, that's probably a good time to make the phone calls. Now, when do you make phone calls now that are cold? If you make cold calls, do you track that? Do you see what day, what time? Do you understand these are the days and times that you typically call outgoing cold? And by looking at that list, do you identify when you get the most responses? So my challenge to you would be, if you're going to make a phone call and they're cold, you don't know if this is a good time or not, track it. Start writing it down on a Tuesday, 3:00 in the afternoon. This is when I called. And how many calls did you make? How many positive results did you get?
That's a great point, because I mean, it's the same thing when you're creating ads, display ads, or even social media posts. You're trying to get out there with those analytics as to when's the best time for the most eyeballs.
Yeah. And by looking at that list, when you started putting those times and dates together, the days of the week with the time, you can see this is when it was highly effective. And I got some results. I got people to answer the phone during this hour of this day. That's a good time to call again in the future, because that's when there's a little bit of a rhythm to business. And, the worst time probably for most people to call is 9:00 on a Monday morning.
Or 4:00 on a Friday. Yeah.
Or 4:00. You know what? I would disagree with that, believe it or not. So here's what I found. And this is kind of getting a little bit ahead, but on a Friday, I have found if I start cold calling at 3:00 on Friday and call for 2 hours, I get more responses, more answers, and more interesting conversations going on a Friday between 3 and 5 p.m. than any other day of the week.
Really?
Yeah, because you know why? They're wrapping up anyway. They're tired. They don't want to work there anymore. They're thinking about the weekend. Okay, I'll answer that phone call because I don't want to work anymore for the week. So I'll answer the phone call. And even if it's a cold call, I'll answer it, right? That seems to be what happens.
That's amazing, because I would be totally the opposite of, I'm not answering that call. I know what it is. It's 3:00 on a Friday. That ain't going to happen.
Really, because I feel like most people, when they see the phone call at 3:00 on a Friday, they're like, who's calling me on a Friday at 3:00? Huh, I got to know who this is. It's like a weird, It's a weird scenario. That's the times that I have found when I make phone calls that it's most effective. Now, that is not always the case every Friday, 3 o'clock to 5. I'm not saying that's the case. But when I look at the trend over the course of a couple of years, when I've had those phone calls between 3 and 5 on a Friday afternoon, they tend to have better results. So
Wow.
by tracking, that's how you find that out. And then the other thing you want to track is when you get zero results, when you get zero answers, nobody answers the phone, nobody's there, it's crickets. Ghost town. It's like nothing going on. Obviously, when you run into that scenario, that is probably not the best time to make phone calls. And it usually mirrors analytics when I look at the Google Analytics, same thing. If you call on a Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, no results. And yeah, maybe the website, I'm not getting a lot of results then too, if that's the case. So what I find is that seems to be consistent with the whole thing. So what I would recommend is I would structure your calling times to fit when you get the best results. Does that make sense?
No, that absolutely makes sense. Yeah. What I don't like about that is that I have to make a lot of phone calls, a lot of cold calls to figure out what those times are, though.
Yes, but if you think about it in terms of, instead of I have to make phone calls, think about it this way. I get to make phone calls so that I get to figure out when is the best time to get the best results so that the results are so positive that I look forward to my next phone call. Isn't that
You
weird?
sound you sound like me when I'm trying to convince my kids to eat vegetables. You don't have to eat the broccoli. You get to eat the broccoli.
But it's true, right? Because if you have to, it's a feeling of it's a regret. It's a feeling of what's the word I'm looking for? It's just like a dread. It's a
It's like
dread.
obligation. Yeah.
The dread. It's a feeling of I don't feel like doing this. But if you actually take a moment and think about it in terms of I got to find out when is the best time to make phone calls. So let's make 20 right now. Figure out if that's a good time to make them or not.
20. Wow.
And make it so that you use your analytics to figure out your Google Analytics, even figure out when the most calls come in, start there. And if you may find that those are the best times to make outgoing calls and you start getting leads doing that you don't have to find any other days and times. You don't have to keep making phone calls. You get to make more calls. And during a time that people will actually get the results that you think will happen. Are cold calls fun? No, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it just like everybody else. Anybody that tells you they love doing cold calls is a liar. I will tell you that right now, because there's no way in the world I know anybody who says, I love making cold calls. No way. I don't believe it one bit.
Nor would I.
So what did you take away from this episode? Anything valuable out of this episode?
No, I really like the fact that we kind of made that connection with, analytics in general. I mean, we use analytics for a whole lot of other business decisions all the time. And it never really occurred to me that you could apply the same to cold calls to try to find those perfect times to make a call.
Yeah, good. And don't tell anybody about that secret, because I want to make sure that we're the most effective people at making cold calls than anybody else and not my competitors. So don't tell anybody.
Yeah, mom's the word.
It's a secret. So until next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Slow Pitch Podcast. If you enjoyed listening, please share on Twitter, Facebook, or via Carrier Pigeon. Our website is theslowpitch.com. If you have any questions or comments, please call or text us at 608-708-SLOW. That's 608-708-7569. You can also email us at questions@theslowpitch.com. We'd love to share your questions or feedback on the podcast.